No matter how long you've been in business, no matter how good you are, how good your service and your products are, at some point you're probably going to have some type of refund or return. It's okay. It's part of business and it shouldn't be taken personally. The question for us becomes, though, other than tracking that refund or that credit within QuickBooks for accounting purposes, how do I also communicate it to my clients? Especially if you have clients who do a lot of business with you, or even those who do very few, you sometimes want to provide them a statement, and that will show exactly what's occurred for a certain period of time. The Easy Step interview asked you if you wanted to create statements, and you may have said yes or no. But regardless, one of the things that we have to do before we can create statements, at least if we're going to assess finance charges, is to set those charges up. In order to do so, we'll go up to Edit, down to Preferences, and we will choose the Finance Charge category on the left-hand side. There aren't any for my preferences, but there certainly are for the company, and this is where we need to start filling in our information. When it comes to an annual interest rate, there really aren't any rules. You can charge anything you want, with one exception. You can't have outrageously high finance charges. In other words, I can't charge somebody 21% per month. For most states and even the federal government, that's called usury, and it is illegal. So you have to be reasonable in what you're doing. I'm going to go ahead and put in a 12% interest rate, which is annual, or it would be 1% per month. Then I'll press Tab to move to my next field. And that is, do I have a minimum finance charge? Now you really have to get into the question of what is it that you're trying to do with your finance charges? Is it punitive to punish people who don't pay their bills? Is it to maybe back you up for some of the funds that it costs in order to keep accounting people and bookkeepers following up with people? That really is kind of a mixed bag, and it depends on your business. You don't have to have a minimum finance charge. Or you can say, if you have any outstanding balance, the minimum that I'll charge you is 50 cents. Maybe it's not even worth making the statement if I'm going to get less than 50 cents. I'm going to go ahead and leave this at 0. And then I'll press Tab to move to my grace period. When you talk about a grace period, again, we're talking about being reasonable. If I have a bill that's due from somebody on the 1st of the month, if I get their full payment on the 2nd or the 3rd, am I still going to assess them a finance charge? You kind of have to be careful there. Of course, some people are hard line and they have a hard and fast rule that it always is what it is. I like to give people a little benefit of the doubt. So I might put in maybe they have 10 days past the period before I'm going to assess the charges. What this means is if their bill is due on the 1st and they pay me on the 9th, then they're not going to be assessed the late fee. If they pay me on the 11th, they will. So I'm going to put in 10 days for the grace period, and again, I'll press Tab. You need to have an account to which you're going to apply the finance charges, and that kind of makes sense. If you think about it, when you assess a finance charge, the company is actually making some money. You need to tell it what kind of money that is. Well, it's not money from a sale of a good. It's not money from any other type of real thing. It's just a finance charge. You didn't provide anything for it. So usually you want to create a finance charge account. It can be called finance charges, or you can create your own. If I was going to create another one, I would just go to Add New. It's considered other income. I can give it an account name, maybe late fees. And it doesn't need any other information, so I'll just say Save and Close. And now I have an account through which I can track all of the monies I've made via finance charges. All right, we're getting down there, but the next thing I have to understand is, do I want to assess finance charges on overdue finance charges? And you're like, okay, this is getting really complicated. Here's what it's saying. If somebody owed a $100 balance, and last month you assessed them a $1 finance charge, now they owe $101. They still haven't paid their bill. So this month, do you want to assess the new finance charge on the original $100 or on the new $101? You do have to be careful here because in some locations it's illegal to assess finance charges on finance charges. I just like to keep it simple. Pay me the charges on whatever the original amount was. I'm not going to compound it. So I usually don't check that box, but it is an option. Next thing we have to decide, and again, you kind of have to be logical and maybe a bit empathetic here. What are you calculating your charges from? For example, if somebody bought something on January 1st, it was due on February 1st, but they didn't pay me until March 1st. Would I assess all of these finance charges based on it being 30 days late from the due date or 60 days late from the invoice date? Some people have the feeling that you actually owed the money already 30 days when it was due and they didn't pay it. So when they pay it another month later, it's actually been 60 days. Again, personal choice. I prefer to bill from the due date and not from the date that they were actually invoiced or billed. Lastly, you have the option to mark all of your finance charge invoices to be printed. I don't know many people that actually print these out. I don't want to print a separate invoice and mail it to somebody to say, I just charged you 32 cents because you're late. So I choose not to do that. You always can do that later on, because what this will do when you assess a charge is it is going to create an invoice for each customer. And just like any other invoice, you can go back at any time and email that or print that for the customer if they request you to do so. With that set up, I'm going to go to the upper right and click OK. And now I'm going to go in and I need to make something to which we're going to apply the charges. Throughout this course, we've been working pretty much within the current date, so I don't have anything that's more than 30 days old. So I'm just going to create an invoice real quick that we can see that will be finance charged. I'll go up and I'll select somebody we haven't used for a while. Let's go ahead and use Mark Patterson. And let's pretend that he bought 10 Office 2007 CBTs, like so. So a total of $4,240. The important part here is I have to make sure that I backdate, that I go up and change this to 1/1/2009. That way it's definitely past due. Once I get that all finished, I'll save and close. QuickBooks nicely reminds me that I'm backdating something and I'm aware of that, so I can show you how this works. And now I'm ready to assess my charges. When I look at my home screen, there are a couple of things that catch my eye. First, there are statement charges, and then there are finance charges. Statement charges would actually open up a register, and you could put in different fees that you're going to put on somebody's statement. An example of that would be if you had to file a small claims case, and you're actually going to charge people for that. You don't really want to put that on an invoice, but you can create it as a statement charge. I'm simply going to work with good old finance charges, so I'll give that option a click. This is telling me that one of my customers has a credit. I'm aware of that, so I'll say OK. And here we have Mark Patterson show up because he is currently the only customer who has outstanding invoices to which a finance charge would apply. So what do we need to do? Well, first of all, we need to do an assessment date. And I'm actually going to put this back to the 1st of July. This was everything through the 1st of July. It's now the 9th of July, and that's why I'm doing the statement fees, because remember I gave them a grace period. So I kind of wanted to see if anybody gave me a check. This finance charge dropdown is actually the type of form that will be used. We can customize those, but finance charge is just the default for the form that would be used to see this. I can choose to check or deselect people. You do need to be consistent. Again, this is not really legal advice, but just something that's maybe good advice. You need to be fairly consistent. You can't not charge somebody a finance charge if they're perpetually late and then all of a sudden go back and say, now I've had enough, I'm going to charge you. If you're going to charge somebody, you should be charging them on a regular basis. If you're not going to charge them, then you just shouldn't charge them. That's kind of the way it is. So this allows me to select people if I want to. Maybe somebody has extenuating circumstances. If they already had a finance charge applied, that would show up. Gives me the customer, gives me their overdue balance, tells me that for Mark, the finance charge is going to be $252.31. Here again, I see the option that I can have this printed. I'm not going to. If I needed to go back into my preferences, I could click the settings button, or if I'm ready to just assess the charge, I click that button on the bottom right. It closes out and you say, okay, great, what happened? Well, if I go back to my invoices and go to previous, we can scroll back to see an invoice for a finance charge. Remember, it used the special finance charge form, not the regular invoice form, for Mark. And I really like this. They've kind of modified this in the last version or so. It doesn't just say finance charge. It says finance charge on overdue balance, and then it tells him exactly which invoice it is. Invoice number 8 for $4,240 that was originally given to you on 1/1/2009. That's really going to help somebody if they say, wait a second, I don't have an overdue balance. It's going to prevent a phone call where you have to explain it. I really, really like that feature. As we've seen before on the bottom left, we can print or we can email this. I'm just going to save and close. So that's how we assess the finance charges as well as viewing those finance charges after they're already created.